1910 New York City. Upper East Side, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. A young woman steps out of a bookstore near 27th Street. She is well-dressed, recognizable, unhurried. Thousands pass within arm's reach. And then she is gone. There is no scream. No witness who notices a moment of rupture. No interruption in the city's rhythm. Only absence, spreading backward through time as hours pass, as dinner plates go untouched, as lamps are lit without her return. Her name is Dorothy Harriet Camille Arnold, 25 years old, an heiress, educated, observed, protected by money, reputation, and routine. She disappears in broad daylight from one of the busiest streets on earth. By nightfall, the family tells no one. By morning, nothing has changed except the silence. The city keeps moving. The gap remains. Somewhere between Fifth Avenue and home, something failed to follow the rules. If stories like this draw you closer rather than away, there's a quiet way to remain here, to follow, to listen, to stay. Dorothy Arnold left her family's residence at 108 East 79th Street late on the morning of December 12, 1910. She told her mother she intended to shop for a dress for her younger sister's coming-out party. The explanation was ordinary. Her clothing was appropriate for the season. She carried a black fox muff. In her purse, $20 to $30. Nothing suggested departure. Nothing suggested an ending. She walked south along Fifth Avenue. At 59th Street, she stopped at Park and Tilford's and purchased half a pound of chocolates, charged to the family account. The clerk recognized her. There was no distress. From there, she continued on foot another 30 blocks to Brentano's bookstore at 27th Street. Again, she charged the purchase, this time a light volume of short stories. The receipt placed her there just before 2 o'clock. Outside the store, Dorothy encountered a friend, Gladys King. They spoke briefly. They discussed the upcoming debutante event. Dorothy laughed. Gladys left for a lunch engagement. Dorothy stated she planned to walk home through Central Park. This is the last confirmed sighting. When Dorothy failed to return for dinner, the family expressed surprise, then concern, but took no immediate action. They assumed she had stayed with a friend. Discreet telephone calls were made, requests framed carefully, secrecy emphasized. When one friend called back after midnight, Mrs. Arnold stated that Dorothy had returned and was sleeping. The statement was untrue. By morning, Dorothy was still missing. The family did not contact police. Instead, they summoned John S. Keith, a young attorney connected to their legal firm and familiar with Dorothy socially. He was taken to her bedroom. Her clothing remained. Her possessions were undisturbed. In a desk drawer, Keith found letters, some bearing foreign postmarks. On the desk lay brochures from transatlantic steamship lines. In the fireplace, charred papers, unreadable. Keith checked hospitals, morgues, and institutions in New York, then Boston, then Philadelphia. No records matched. No unidentified patient fit her description. After weeks without result, he advised the family to involve the Pinkerton Detective Agency. The Pinkertons circulated notices nationally and abroad. Steamship departures were reviewed. Marriage records examined. No trace emerged. Only in late January, 6 weeks after Dorothy vanished, did the New York City police formally enter the case. Under pressure, Francis Arnold addressed the press. He stated his belief that his daughter had been murdered in Central Park and her body thrown into the reservoir. The ponds were searched. Nothing surfaced. The water was frozen. Attention shifted to Dorothy's private life. A forbidden relationship came into view. Letters. A secret trip to Boston. Pawned jewelry. An older man unemployed, dismissed by her father. Each detail arrived publicly, stripped of context, examined for motive. The family resisted speculation, then fueled it. Control of information became part of the pattern. The investigation's first phase produced movement without direction. There were no witnesses beyond the last conversation. No physical evidence beyond paper and absence. No crime scene. Just a timeline that ended too cleanly. If you find yourself weighing these early decisions, the silence, the delay, the careful shaping of facts, There is space below this account where your observations can exist alongside the record. As the case moved beyond its first weeks, the investigation did not deepen. It fractured. Information arrived without sequence, without verification, without coherence. Each new report seemed to cancel the one before it, leaving investigators with motion but no direction. Sightings came first. Dorothy was seen in a New York hospital, then in Idaho, then in Philadelphia. She was reported in Europe, in Honolulu, in rescue missions and boarding houses. Each claim carried confidence. Each collapsed under scrutiny. Newspapers began printing daily columns titled with variations of the same phrase, "Today's Guesses." The repetition hollowed meaning from the words. Then there was the postcard. In February 1911, the Arnolds received a brief message postmarked New York. 2 sentences. "I am safe." Signed Dorothy. The handwriting resembled hers. Frances Arnold dismissed it immediately as a forgery. By then, her handwriting had been widely reproduced in newspapers. Anyone could have copied it. The card provided no location, no explanation, no proof of life. It did not fit cleanly into either theory, death or departure. It hovered between. Other anomalies surfaced earlier, then returned with sharper edges. The package delivered to Dorothy in Washington on Thanksgiving Day, when no mail was ordinarily delivered, remained unexplained. Its contents were never confirmed. Dorothy did not open it in front of her friend. She left the city 3 days early without reason. When questioned later, she insisted she had always planned to leave when she did. The same phrase appeared again when she returned to New York ahead of schedule. The repetition felt rehearsed. In her bedroom, the burned papers in the Great resisted interpretation. Some believed they were rejected manuscripts. Others suspected letters. Nothing legible survived. Steamship brochures remained on the desk, untouched. They suggested intention without follow-through, or curiosity without commitment. As the press expanded the story, noise overwhelmed substance. Reports contradicted one another within the same day's edition. The case became elastic, capable of holding any narrative. Police officials began to express a different kind of uncertainty, not about what happened, but whether anything criminal had occurred at all. After 75 days without a single actionable clue, the investigation was downgraded. The assumption shifted quietly from crime to disappearance. Years later, darker claims surfaced. A so-called mystery house near Pittsburgh. Furnaces large enough for bodies. A doctor accused of illegal operations. A witness who claimed Dorothy had been there and died there. The allegations were dramatic. They were also unsupported. Searches found no remains. Statements were retracted. Charges reduced. The story burned hot, then extinguished itself. In 1916, another confession emerged. A man in prison claimed to have helped bury a woman near West Point. He identified her as Dorothy Arnold. Police excavated the location. Nothing was found. The man recanted. The ground closed again. Perhaps the most unsettling moment came in 1921, when a police captain publicly stated that the case had been solved and that Dorothy was no longer listed as missing. Within 24 hours, the statement was withdrawn. A misunderstanding. A misquote. No explanation followed. What remained were fragments that never aligned. A postcard without proof, a package without contents, letters without originals, confessions without bodies. Each hinted at resolution. None delivered it. The case accumulated signals that pointed everywhere and nowhere at once. If this account holds your attention, a simple acknowledgement, marked quietly, helps keep these unresolved details visible rather than forgotten. Before she became a disappearance, Dorothy Arnold was a presence shaped by expectation. Born into wealth, raised within social boundaries that were firm and rarely questioned. She moved through a world where her future was assumed to be stable, respectable, and narrow. Education was permitted. Independence was not. She graduated from Bryn Mawr College in 1905. Languages, literature, conversation, these were acceptable interests, but only as refinements, not as destinations. Writing, for Dorothy, was not a pastime. It was an aspiration. That distinction mattered. It placed her slightly out of alignment with the life prepared for her. At 25, unmarried, she existed in a shrinking margin. Her younger sister's debut approached. Attention shifted away from her. The social calendar closed doors as quietly as it opened them. She asked to live alone in Greenwich Village, not to escape comfort, but to access a different kind of seriousness. Her father refused. He believed discipline could replace environment. He believed authority could substitute for understanding. Dorothy complied. Outwardly, she wrote. She submitted stories. She waited for responses. The first rejection arrived. It was shared with her family. They teased her. The second rejection followed. This one she did not discuss openly. Instead, she wrote privately. Her letter to George Griscom contained a sentence that has been quoted repeatedly, isolated from its context. All I can see ahead is a long road with no turning. Mother will always think an accident has happened. Whether it was despair, irony, or something more deliberate remains unclear. Her relationship with Griscom existed in opposition to her family structure. He was older, unemployed, disapproved of. With him, she took risks, traveling alone, pawning jewelry, registering under her own name. These were small acts, but they marked deviation. When she returned from Boston, she resumed her role. When she visited Washington, she received a mysterious package and left early. Again, she returned to the expected position without explanation. On December 10th, she hosted friends at lunch. Witnesses described her as cheerful. On December 12th, she bought chocolates. She bought a book. She laughed on the sidewalk. These details resist a single emotional reading. They do not exclude despair. They do not confirm it either. What is most consistent in the record is her control of language. When questioned about her movements, she corrected assumptions without elaboration. When confronted with expectations, she agreed without compliance. When she vanished, she left no note, no instruction, no appeal. The investigation often treats her as an object moved by forces: family, society, lovers, danger. Less often does it allow for the possibility that she acted with intention, even if that intention led nowhere visible. Her silence after December 12th may not have been imposed. It may have been chosen. Or it may have been the final consequence of choices made earlier, intersecting with circumstances that erased her before she could speak again. Every explanation proposed for Dorothy Arnold's disappearance begins with the same problem. The city did not notice her leaving. Fifth Avenue absorbed her without resistance. No witness described urgency. No interruption marked the moment she crossed from presence into absence. The most frequently cited theory remains suicide. Central Park, winter, water. Her letter to Griscom is treated as premeditation. The burned papers become preparation. The postcards, misdirection. Yet no body was recovered. Reservoirs were drained in later years. Construction crews excavated ground that would have preserved remains. Nothing conclusively tied to her was ever found. The theory persists largely because it fits expectation rather than evidence. Another theory proposes an illegal medical procedure. Abortion in 1910 was both common and deadly. Women of means sought discreet solutions. Complications were often concealed. Bodies were destroyed. The Pittsburgh doctor narrative thrives here, despite its failures, because it offers an explanation for both disappearance and silence. But again, it relies on secondary testimony, late confessions, and assumptions about secrecy rather than documentation. Voluntary disappearance suggests intention and planning. Steamship brochures, pawn jewelry, letters sent abroad, a life constructed elsewhere. This theory must account for sustained silence, including toward friends and Griscom himself. It requires either a clean break or an enforced one. No financial trail supports it. No later sighting withstands scrutiny. Foul play, abduction, or murder faces the difficulty of location. Fifth Avenue in daylight is not conducive to unnoticed violence. Central Park, while less visible, still produced no trace. No suspect emerged with proximity, motive, and opportunity. The final possibility is not a single event, but convergence. A decision made without a plan. A moment of vulnerability intersecting with chance. A choice followed by an accident. A risk taken at the wrong time in the wrong place, with no witness who recognized its importance. What remains unanswered is not just how Dorothy disappeared, but why the case was managed as it was. The delay in contacting police. The selective release of information. The father's shifting public statements. Control, in this case, may have been an additional force shaping the outcome, not malicious, but protective, and therefore distorting. Dorothy Arnold's absence has lasted longer than her life. The city that failed to register her leaving has continued, rebuilt, layered over itself. The streets she walked remain crowded. The bookstore is gone. The chocolate shop renamed. The path home erased by time. What cannot be erased is the shape of the gap she left behind, clean, unbroken, resistant to explanation. A disappearance without spectacle. A mystery sustained not by what is known, but by what never arrived. Dorothy Arnold has now been missing for more than a century. The time span itself distorts perception. What once felt urgent has become archival. Ink fades. Buildings vanish. Names turn unfamiliar. And yet, her disappearance does not recede into history the way others do. It remains intact because it never resolved. There is no grave to stand beside, no verdict to accept, no final document that ends the sentence. Just a young woman stepping into a city that promised anonymity and delivered it too completely. In many cases, time supplies meaning. Here, time only removes context. We are left with gestures frozen mid-action, chocolates purchased, a book selected, a conversation cut short. These details survive because nothing replaced them. No aftermath ever arrived to overwrite the ordinary. Perhaps that is why Dorothy Arnold still unsettles. Not because of violence, but because of silence. Her story resists drama. It refuses confession. It offers no warning and no closure. It suggests that disappearance does not always require darkness. Only a moment the world fails to record. Somewhere between 27th Street and home, Dorothy crossed into a version of New York that left no trace. Whether by choice, by accident, or by force, she exited the record while remaining inside the question. The city moved on. History did not pause. But the space she left, precise, measured, and unresolved, remains. And perhaps that is the quiet horror at the center of this case, that a life can end or change forever, without leaving behind enough evidence to explain itself. The mystery does not ask to be solved. It asks to be remembered.